Right. Okay. So welcome to the third lecture of fundamentals of programming. So today, my plan is to finish this set of slides. Right. So we were discussing what programming is, and then assembly language, high-level languages, compilers and interpreters. Yes, basically those things were discussed. I think now you know what compiler is, what interpreter is, and what's the difference between these two. And then you know that in C programming we are working with compilers. So if you want to work with C programs, C code, source codes, so what you have to do is the minimum requirement is you need a C compiler. If you install a C compiler in your computer, so that's enough. So you can work with C. So, however, to get the maximum out of your time, and then make the programming, writing programs that tiresome work easier. So with you can use IDE. Right? So I'll show you those different ways that you can write programs. The first one is, as I told you, like if you just install a compiler, still you can write programs. Right? For example, if you install compiler is the minimum requirement. So the most the common or the most popular C compiler is right, MinGW. You can install MinGW. Right? If you just Google download MinGW, you can find it. There are different versions. So you can install it very easily. Right? Then after installing, you can write your program using any editor. Right? For example, if you want to write your program on a so let's say like so if you want to write with Notepad, right? Open a Notepad and you can write your program, right? Like I said, so include stdio.h and then int main and so on, right? So you can write your program like this. And then what you have to do is you can save it. Okay, let's see. Create a new folder here. C programs. So I create a new folder. Inside that, I have to save this program with .c for example, let's say my first program. So first .c. The extension, file extension is .c. Right? So that's how you save your programs. Now, like this program has been saved, right? So if you go to, let's documents, C programs, yeah. So this is my C program. Right, see. This is my C program. First .c. Whatever the name that you can give any name, right? Now, so then you can open command line and run this program. So that's possible. I will show you how to do that. Huh? I don't worry. I will show all of those things later. So definitely on Friday practical session. So that's a one way. But you should have C compiler installed in your computer. Okay. So that's the first option. Right. Let's make it number one. So number two is you can install an IDE, integrated development environment. So IDE, what I recommend is code blocks, as you all already know, code blocks. And then I said, like, you can go with VS Code, Visual Studio Code, right? So if you install code blocks, I showed you, there are several options. You have to install code blocks with MinGW. There are different versions, but you have to install with MinGW. The C compiler. You can install code blocks without C compiler, but please use this version. If you install VS Code, no problem. However, you have to separately install MinGW. And then there are several extensions. I will show you again later, maybe the practical session, Friday, how to install, how to set up VS Code to write C programs. Okay. So either of this way, you can prepare your environment, right? So then there could be a question, right? So there are students who don't have computers or devices, what they can do, right? So let's. I will share a survey, Google survey on that to check the students who are not having facilities or the devices, proper devices to do the practicals. So I will share a survey maybe today on LMS, right? So please check the LMS. No, maybe tomorrow. So I'll share it tomorrow. So please, so I will ask a few questions. Please fill them, and then so based on that, I can have an idea how many students are not having proper facilities. So then I'll talk to them and I will arrange something for those students, right? Okay. Others, so you can go with these two options, but if you go with an IDE, so it will be easier for you, right? You can easily work with programs like, for example, if you use this method, like write on text editors, and then you have to manually compile. You have to manually compile and you have to manually execute the program. It is kind of I mean, I think not very difficult, but not so easy, right? So I recommend to go with ID, but let's try this as well. Just install that file and how to manually do that. Let's see that as well. Okay, so there are two questions here. So I am joining two devices. Okay, yeah, no problem. So if you are joining with two devices, no problem. That's fine. And then in first case, should we install C compiler or MinGW? So MinGW is a C compiler. It is a C compiler. So C compiler. So there are several types of C compilers, right? So MinGW is one of them. So there are some other C compilers as well. So MinGW is the common and the most popular, right? So MinGW is the compiler. Okay. Yes, integrated development environment would be easier, right? But you should know how to do that manually as well. But I'll show you, and you can try by yourself as well. But when you write your programs, so let's go with the ID. So when I was at the university, so then we didn't have those facilities. At the time, there were no much IDs available. So not many IDs are available. So we had to do that manually. Even for Java, for one semester, right? For one semester, we had to compile and run Java programs manually using command line, using commands. I mean, our lecturer, he forced us to do that for one semester. We had to write our programs on text editors. Right? So, I mean, I know some software engineers, right? They are so used to work with text editors like Notepad. So some of them, they are still writing their programs on text editors. Maybe, I don't know, like now they have changed, but even in my fourth year, final year, there were some students who, even there were some IDs, they didn't go for IDs, they used text editors. Right. Right. Okay. So there are some many other IDs, so you can like that. These are just two code blocks, VS Code. So there are many other IDs you can use. Even Visual Studio, I have used Visual Studio for C++, C++ programming. So it is. So they provide facilities. Right. Okay. So let's let's move to this part. So introduction to C programming. I briefly introduced this part in the last session. So today I'm going to go through the contents and detail, and then we can discuss the compilation process of C program compilation process. It is at the end of yeah, so here in the slide 29. Right. Okay. So C program. Introduction to C. As you already know by now, the Dennis Ritchie. I consider him as a genius, the pioneer of modern programming. So he developed C program, C language. Sorry, there's one student. Now it's me. Okay, sorry for the interruption. So he developed C language in 1972 at Bell Telephone Laboratories. We generally call Bell Labs. So it is important. So I have already explained why it is important, and almost all modern operating systems were developed using C. Right. So such an important language, important invention, right? So C was created based on BCPL and B. There was a language previous to C language, which was called B language, right? So it is kind of funny. So there was B, and then C was introduced. The first C compiler was developed using B language, right? Specifically, new B, or we call NB, right? NB. So C language, let's talk about the features of C language. So if I ask you the features of Python, what can you say? So can you give me some features that you know about how Python? So file handling, I mean, it is a capability of the language, but file handling is not, we cannot consider it as a feature. File handling can be done using C, using Python, using Java, right? Using C#, we can do file handling. It is not a feature. I mean, you can say like Python can has the capability of file handling. Yeah, so can be considered as feature, but what else? Data structuring. What do you mean by data structuring? Data structuring is common to programming. Easy to code. Yeah, that's a feature. Easy to use, right? Easy to program. Yes, open source. Very good. High level language. Yes, that's true. Beginner friendly. Yes, that can be considered as a feature. No need to use semicolon at the end of the line. Yes, yeah. That can be considered as a feature, yes. Extensible, yes. Can be used for mobile app development, yes. Portable, yes. If I add something object-oriented, backend programming, yeah, it can be used for backend programming, yes. Can be used for multiple purposes. We can generally say general purpose. Right? Closer, user-friendly, closer to what machines really understand. So are you talking about Python or C? Support for GUI, yeah, okay. So if I add something object-oriented, right? So it is object-oriented, and then imperative. I will explain what imperative is, right? And then object-oriented, loosely tied. Dynamic memory management, yeah. Yeah, okay. So let's so likewise we can identify some features of C language. So let's talk about C language now. Let's shift into C, right? So now C is general purpose, right? So general purpose as Python. So Python is general purpose because we can use it for different purposes. When it comes to web applications, so we can use it for web applications, especially in the backend, right? Server-side scripting. And then if we want to create a desktop application, we can do that, right? So if you want to use that for network programming to access network resources, it is possible. If you want to create compilers or operating systems, compilers, that kind of system applications, C can be used. Right? So C is general purpose. We can use that for different purposes. So if we take some languages like I cannot say them those programming languages as programming languages. HTML. It is a language, but not programming language. I don't consider it as a programming language. So HTML is it general purpose? No, it is just for web application. even in web applications, just to provide the structure of a web page, just to provide the structure, right? Markup. So we call it markup. It is a markup language. It is not a general purpose. Let's take SQL. Right? It is not a programming language, but it's a language to access a database. It is not general purpose. It is specifically designed for that. Right? So likewise, so we have some specific languages for specific purposes. C is general purpose. Yeah, scripting languages. So scripting language. This is about Python. Python is a scripting language, right? And we can say interpreted language. So we use interpreter to convert it, right? So then C provides the fundamental control flow constructions required for well-structured programs, right? So we can learn them later on, right? So then C is relatively low level language. If I compare C with Python or Java, right? So the C language is relatively low level. So that means it is closer to machine language, right? For example, if you are using C, so then you have to handle many things. For example, memory management. The programmer's responsibility. So the memory management is programmer's responsibility. And for example, we are going to talk about arrays later on. Next few weeks, within next few weeks, so we'll be talking about arrays, how arrays are used in C language. So boundary checking of arrays. So array has a size, so we have to check whether our program goes beyond that boundaries. Those things should be handled by the program. But in other languages like Java, memory is handled by the language itself, right? The compiler would handle that, the memory management. So we call garbage collector. There's a special program called garbage collector. So it will handle memory. You don't have to worry about the memory, right? So likewise, C is relatively low level. Right? Python, Java, those are like pure high level languages. I cannot say pure, but those are more high level languages. That's it. So that means it creates code that a lot closer to what machines really understand, closer to machine language. Although C just the capabilities of many computers, it is independent of any particular machine architecture. Right? So so we can write our programs for example, for this computer, right? I can run the same program in a different computer in most of the cases, right? So, however, in the different architectures, sometimes if the program is converted into machine code, that machine code cannot be executed in some architecture, some computers, right? However, the language itself is machine independent, right? Mono language එකෙන් ලිව්වත් මේක මොන machine එකේ මොන architecture එක වෙනස් ඒවා තිබුණාට අපි C program එකක් ලියන්නේ මේ machine එකක් බලාගෙන නෙවෙයි. We are not writing our program for specific architecture, right? When the compilers, different compilers, they convert those programs into their machine, right? So that's the responsibility of the compiler. Can happen that Windows machine එකේ අපි install කරලා තියෙන compile එක Windows machine එකකට Windows හරියේ තියෙන machine එකට අදාළ machine code එකට convert. ඊට පස්සේ අපි ඒක Unix machine එකක අපි compile එකකින් convert කරොත් ඒ Unix machine එකට අදාළ ඒ machine language එකට convert. එහෙම වුණාට අපි program එක ලියද්දී අපි මොන machine ද එහෙම හිතන්නේ නැහැ අපිට. ඒක මේ it is independent of the any particular machine architecture. The language is independent, right? Originally, C is not strongly typed language, but it has evolved. So this type problem. So this is we'll talk about that full 2 hour maybe 2 sessions. Right? We'll talk about this type. Data type thing. So there's a question, so how scientists make compilers? Is it complicated? Yes, it is complicated because I mean compiler, what it does is complicated. It's not something that a simple program that we are writing. So there are many things to be considered. And then the person who does that should have a proper understanding of how machine works, and then how memory works, and then about assembly language and machine language. Those things should be, they have an idea, right? So it is complicated, but I mean, how scientists, I don't call them scientists, right? It doesn't have to be a scientist. Programmers can do it, right? So let's say like they are programmers. Programmers sometimes like I know some people like they are very young, but they have written compilers, right? It doesn't have to be scientist. Even you can do that if you learn programming, if you understand, if you go into the deep of programming, so you can do it, but it's complicated. So yeah, so I was talking about originally C is not strongly typed, right? For example, Python is not strongly typed, right? If you are using any data, if you are using a variable, you don't have to worry about the type of that variable, right? So we call them loosely typed languages. Python is loosely typed language, but C is strongly typed language. Originally, C was not strongly typed, but now, like the modern C that we are using, it is strongly typed. So if you are using any data, if you want to display any data, you have to consider its type. You have to explicitly mention the type. Right? Type එක mention කරන්න ඕනේ. දැන් Python වල එහෙම data type එක ඇතුලෙන් language එක ඇතුලෙන්ම handle කරනවා. compilers වලින් ඒකට handle කරනවා ඒකේ type එක. අපි දාලා තියෙන data එක අනුව ඒකේ type එක එයා handle කරගන්නවා. language එකෙන් ලොකු වැඩ ටිකක් කරනවා. C වල language එකෙන් කරන වැඩ ටික අඩුයි අපිට වැඩ ගොඩක් තියෙනවා. හරි එතකොට මේ type එක mention කරන එක ඒකත් එක්ක වැඩ කරන එක ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑමර් කරන්න ඕනේ. type එක හරියට දෙන එක. It is strongly typed. C is strongly typed now. And C is imperative procedural language. So what is imperative? Anyone who was heard this word, imperative. So there's opposite of imperative. What is that? Imperative. Superlative. In the programming context, so we have an opposite. We call declarative. Declarative. So we have imperative languages and declarative. So in declarative languages, right? We define like in a program. So we write what we want. Right? Here, right? What we want. From the program, right? What we expect, something like that. So for example, so let's say SQL. SQL is used to deal with the databases. Right? SQL, in SQL, so we explain in the language, we explain what we want from the database. For example, select all from that table. Something like select something like this. We explain what we want. We don't say how to do that. Right? How to select that. Right? So suppose if there's a table, we want to get all the data from that table. Right? Select all from whatever, right? We don't say how to do that. So then it'll how to do that would be handled by the language. Right, SQL. And then another language is, we can consider HTML as well. Yeah. HTML. Again, HTML, we say how we want this page. So we want a heading, and we want a paragraph, and so on. Right? We don't say how to do that. ඒක කොහොමද කරන්නේ කියලා මේ කියන්නේ නැහැ HTML. HTML වල අපි එක්ස්ප්ලেইন කරන්නේ අපිට මොකක්ද ඕනේ page එකේ මොකක්ද structure එක. What we want. Right? So these are and then CSS, even CSS can be considered as declarative type of a language. And then another language is Prolog. Prolog was famous. Nowadays, it is not so famous. Maybe 15 years ago, 15 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, it was famous in, especially in AI. Artificial intelligence, it was famous. So nowadays, we don't teach. Even in the universities, we don't teach Prolog, but at the time, it was taught Prolog. Even in Prolog, so I have learned Prolog a little. So in Prolog, we say, we explain the situation, right? And then we explain what we expect, right? Similar in a similar manner, SQL, right? So we explain the logic, right? And then there are some other languages. I don't know much about those languages like Erlang, then Haskell. So maybe we can consider them in declarative language, but I don't know much about those languages. I haven't used them. So definitely these are considered as declarative, right? And then in imperative language, we explain how to do something. We have to explain, we have to tell how to do something. Step by step, we have to explain how to do it. So like, let's start with C. C, Java, C double plus, C sharp, Python, even PHP, right? PHP is then JavaScript. Most of the language that we know are in this category. Many languages. In these languages, we have to tell the computer how to do something step by step. First do this, and then do that, and do this, and so assign this value, and then take these two values and add them, and so on, right? imperative languages. Imperative language. So declarative languages are like that there are some, for example, some rich kids, right? සල්ලි තියෙන සමහර ළමයි අමාරු ජනාධිපතිලාගේ පුතාලා හැම වගේ කියන්නේ මට ඕනේ මොනවද කිව්වම වැඩේ හම්බ වෙනවා. හරි. මට මොකක් හරි මට කාර් පදින්න ඕනේ කියලා කිව්වොත් මට කාර් රේස් යන්න ඕනේ කියලා කිව්වොත් පත් කාලා කාර් රේස් එක ඕගනයිස් වෙනවා. හරි. ඒ වගේ. එතකොට ඒක මේ ඩික්ලරේටිව් අපිට කියන්න තියෙන්නේ මොකද්ද ඕනේ කියලා විතරයි. ඒක ලැන්ග්වේජ් එකෙන් අතරම ඒ කියන්නේ ඒක මේ අපිට මේ ලැන්ග්වේජ් එකෙන් තමයි හැන්ඩල් වෙන්නේ. ඒතර අපි ඒ කියන්නේ ඒකේ ඒ වගේ අර අපි ඒවත් එක්ක වැඩ කරන විදිය වෙනස් ඒ ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම්. හරි. දැන් මම කිව්වා උදාහරණයක් විදිහට තමයි මේ අපි අර සල්ලිකාර පුත්තු කියලා කිව්වේ. හරි. එහෙම ඉම්පෙරටිව් ලැන්ග්වේජස් ගත්තොත් එහෙම මේ ඒක නිකන් අර අපි ඒ කියන්නේ අපි සාමාන්‍ය මිනිස්සු වගේ. කියන්නේ අපිට ඕන නම් දැන් අපිට ඉතුරුත් එහෙම කාර් රේස් වදින්න ඕනේ කියලා ඉතින් අපි මේ සල්ලි හම්බ කරලා කාර් එකක් අරගෙන ඊට පස්සේ රේස් වල ගිහලා එහෙම යනවා. ඊට පස්සේ රග ගහන්න ඕනේ කියලා රග අපි මේ සෑහෙන ප්‍රැක්ටිස් කළා දැන් ගොඩක් මේ අපි දන්නවා රග කීඩකෙක් දී කට්ටිය ගොඩ සෑහෙන පොඩි කාලේ නම් ප්‍රැක්ටිස් කරලා දුක් විඳලා ඉතින් එහෙම තමයි මේ හරි. එතකොට අන්න ඒ වගේ මේ මම මේ උදාහරණයක් විදිහට කිව්වේ ඔය කට්ටියට ගන්න පුළුවන් ඉම්පෙරටිව් කියන මේ දෙකේ වෙනස. ඩික්ලරේටිව් ඒවා මේ කියන්නේ නරකයි කියලා නෙවෙයි මම කියන්නේ. ඩික්ලරේටිව් ඒ වගේ අර අප්‍රෝච් එක වෙනස්. අපි ඒවත් එක්ක වැඩ කරන්න ඕනේ කියන්නේ. ෂෙන් ප්‍රෝලොග්. ඔය කට්ටිය මේ SQL මේවා ටික ඉගෙන ගන්න ප්‍රෝලොග් නම් ඉගෙන ගන්නවා. කියන්නේ තේරුමකුත් නෑ මොකද. AI වලට අපි පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ Python. So we are using Python for mostly Python for AI. So Prolog won't be necessary. It's kind of a old language. So the approach is different in a declarative. Imperative, so we have to explain all the things, all the steps. Right? Yeah, okay. So okay, right, okay. So that's just an example, right? Okay. So so then procedural language is imperative and procedural. So let's see what is procedural. Procedure. So procedural language means so the language or the programs are created as procedures. Right? So if we take so there's a question, yeah, list is also declarative. Could be. I'm not sure. I mean, it could be declarative. I don't remember exactly whether it's declarative or not. So Yeah, so the Hanan says it is declarative. Yes. So please check, double check. So you can. So there are some other declarative languages, as like I said, Pascal, as Hanan says, lives, and then the other one I mentioned, Erlang, right? It is also considered as declarative language, right? Okay, so the procedural languages. Procedural means the program is created with procedures, right? Procedure is something like, I would say, like methods or functions, right? Set of uh, set of commands, right? Set of commands. So we'll learn functions, right? Maybe today I will introduce what is a function. So with C or even in Java, so in Java we have methods, right? In C we have functions, right? Even in Python, so they have functions, right? And then even in JavaScript, they have functions. Likewise, like so, in most of these languages, they have functions, set of instructions considered together. So these type of languages can be considered procedural languages. However, when it takes like Java and Python and then JavaScript, PHP, so they have another concept which is called object oriented, right? So in that case, if we take a C language, so the programs are consist of classes, right? Can programs ඇතුලේ තියෙන classes වලින්. අපි හැම program එකක් ලියද්දී අපි classes තමයි ලියන්නේ. එතකොට ඒ classes ඇතුලේ functions methods තියෙනවා. ඒක වෙනම එකක්. හැබැයි මේ C ගත්තොත් එහෙම C හැදිලා තියෙන්නේ functions. එහෙනම් functions තමයි ලියන්නේ. Procedural. So that in that case we can say C language is procedural, but in when it comes to Java, it is slightly different. Classes තමයි ලියන්නේ Java. So object oriented procedural කියලා අපිට නිකන් පිටන්න. That's like we'll talk about functions. Maybe if we have time today itself, so we can talk about. So C is imperative and procedural language. Right? So C, well, when we execute in C, so we execute functions, so procedures. We execute procedures. So that's why it is called procedural language. C language is small in size. What does that mean? Small in size. Simple in structure. Can anyone guess what it means? What does it mean? C language is small in size. Code is small, but you can write 100,000, 10,000, 50,000 lines. What do you mean by that? Actually, the language is small means, yeah. It has a small vocabulary. Yeah, that's one way we can say. The language is small. I mean, I told you the work of the compiler is small. The compiler එක කරන වැඩ අඩුයි. ඒතර language එකේ තියෙන මේ වැඩ කෑලි අඩුයි. Right? So then you can install a compiler, right? The environment for executing a C program. So it is small. Can අපි program එක programmer තමයි ගොඩක් දේවල් කරන්න ඕනේ language එකෙන් කරන දේවල් අඩු. එතකොට language එක පොඩි. So that's the idea. So language is small, right? The things which is done using the language it is small. So the programmer has a lot of responsibility. So then, you would say, why we have selected C language as your first language that we are teaching here. There's a very good reason, right? So there's a good reason because if you learn C language, so we have an as a lecturer, I can teach you how the low level things are functioning, right? As a beginner, as a student, it is important for you to know those things as well. Not everything, but at least how things work and then how memory works. Those things, if you get familiar with those things, it will be easier for you to learn when you are learning other languages, when you are doing programming. So it will be easier for you to understand some situations. That's why we have chosen, we have selected C language, right? So in C, we can talk about, for example, pointers, right? Pointers are not, if you understand pointers better, when you go to Java, so you can easily understand referrals, right? Those things. So if you learn Python, those concepts wouldn't be, I mean, even without those concepts, you can write programs. But if you learn C, it will be easier. It would be a good opportunity for you to understand those low-level things. Right? Okay, so Samir is leaving because of our interruption. Yes. Okay, so please check the video later, right? Right. Okay, so the features of C, and then C standards. Right? What are standards? Standard in any language, any programming language, we have standards, right? We have set of rules. So set of rules, we call set of standards, defined by the community. C or the people who are using that language would set up a set of rules. And then time to time, those standards are changed based on the requirements of the programmers of the application in that period, right? So C language, so there are several standards that we could identify. So ANSI C, that was the earlier standard, right? In that case, so there were some ways of writing programs, right? Then in 1999, so they introduced C99, right? And then later on in 2011, they introduced C11. Right? So ANSI C is from the late 80s, and it used and is used for the oldest, right? A lot of things were fixed up in C99, standard from 1999. Some cool new language features were added in the current standard C11, released in 2011. But the differences are minimum, not huge. Right? If you take some other languages, the differences are kind of huge. But in C, not much difference. Right? So we are learning almost the same C that introduced in 1972. Almost, not the same one. Right? Right. So why we learn C? Yeah. Basically, C is used where speed, space, and portability are important. Right? Performance-wise, C is better than most of the languages, most of the modern languages. Right? Performance ඕන තැනට C language එක පාවිච්චි කරනවා නම් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට ඒක සාර්ථකයි. If you need performance, speed, and then space, right? So the C language is small in size, right? So then you can execute C programs. Usually you can write smaller programs in size. That's also correct, right? So the C, you can write efficient programs using C. So space can be saved, right? And then portability. So you can write portable programs. You can write program for this computer or for a smaller sensor, right? You can write programs for different devices which are having minimum resources, right? Memory නැති memory එක අඩුවෙන් power යන ඒ වගේ පොඩි devices වලට programs තියෙනවා නම් C වලින් ලියන්න ගොඩක් පුළුවන් මේ ගොඩක් වෙලා. It was initially used for system development, particularly the programs that make up the operating system. System development work, right? That's one area C is specialized. Right? C was adopted as a system development language because it produces a code that runs nearly as fast as the code written in assembly language. The performance-wise, C is very, very good. Right? Some examples of use C might be operating systems, language compilers, assemblers, language interpreters, text editors, print spoolers, network drivers, databases, and like basically system applications. Right? Even though it is best feature of C, the usage of C is not limited to system development. Since it is general purpose language, it can be used to write general programs as well. You can write any program with C. Like C in web applications, C using C is limited. As I know, I mean, C is not a language that we can work with web application. Other than that, C can be used in almost all situations. Okay. Right. Right. Any questions up to now? You can ask any questions. So this is our first C program. Right. So at the same time, like I'm using a different computer, so no code blocks in this computer, so I am downloading it. Right, still it's downloading. All right, okay. So MinGW has been downloaded. So let me check with the MinGW. All right. Yeah, so I think it will be okay now. So after installing MinGW, right? After installing MinGW, so here in my C drive, it is there MinGW, right? Right. Okay. So let's see. Okay, here. So now what I'm going to do is I go to my PC and go to properties. I hope you can see these things. Huh? So then, I right click here and then go to properties. And then advanced system settings. I click there and then this window will be open. There we have something called environment variables. I open that. So now it is the third window I open. There, so we have something called path. Right, I select that, and then go to edit or double click that one or edit. Right. So then I'm going to add a new environment variable. Click new. So here I'm going to add new environment variable. What I'm going to add is this is my MinGW folder. Right, it is in C drive. I go inside and then there's a folder called bin folder. I go there, right? So then I copy this path, right? I just click here and then I copy this path. G MinGW. I copy that. Then here, this edit environment variable, new, I paste it. I added this integer bin, right? Okay, now okay and okay, so now okay, right? So now, so let's open. If you just click here and if you type run, right? If in this search, I just type run, and then here you can open. Or you can just click Windows key with R. Again, you can Windows key with R, run. So then just type CMD. It will open command prompt. So that's a one way. Or if you type command prompt here, you can directly open command. Right? So this is the command prompt. So if you type GCC, right? So there's an error here. Sorry, GCC, sorry. Sure. Yes, GCC 2 minus, right? Minus version. So now it will show you the version of your compiler. It is MinGW. So this is the version 6.3.0. So that means my MinGW is working. It is there. Right? I have C compiler, so C compiler installed. Right. So let me write our first program here, right? So let's write a program like this. I'll explain each of these parts later, right? Int main, or let's say void main, printf. What do you mean by break? Sorry. Sorry. You need a break? Yes, we can have a break. Yes, let's take 5 minutes break. Usually, I mean, these are just 2-hour lectures, so we don't give breaks. But if you need a 5 minutes break, let's take one. Right now it is 2:35. Let's start again at 2:40. Right. But during that time, I'll type this program. I'll do my thing, but you can take it. Okay. Right. All right. Okay. So